So let's cut to the chase. I believe that tremolo is widely being taught somewhat misleadingly, and there are vital missing steps and little tricks that are not being explained properly, even at higher education levels. I actually wrote my own book based on tremolo technique a number of years ago, and it came about purely because I had all these thoughts about how I'd managed to get my tremolo to where I wanted it to be, and none of it had ever been taught to me. And then I had one masterclass, or watched a masterclass rather, with David Russell, our Lord and Saviour, praise be unto him. And he explained things to this student that I had had in my head for years, but had never been explained to me. So this video is not intended to be a building up of the technique from scratch. There are lots of videos out that do that I think are a good starting point. But crucially, I think they then stop having taught slightly misleading ways of approaching it that I believe will be detrimental to your tremolo in the end. And just before we get into the little tips and tricks I have for you, I think it's important as a starting point to think about what tremolo is enabling us to achieve on the guitar. So many of you probably already know that it gives the illusion of a singing sustained line, which combats the main pitfall of the guitar, which is not being able to sustain very well. And it brings us closer to a bowed instrument, or closer to the expression of a human voice. And I think it's really important to think, okay, so if we now have the ability to emulate that form of expression, how do we need to adapt how we think about expressing on our instrument now that we're able to express in an entirely different way? Just something to think about before we launch into the video. But without further ado, off we go. So the one thing I'd like you to take away from this video, you could stop the video after this, and I believe this is the thing that is never taught, or I've never seen it taught until David Russell kind of confirmed my suspicions, is that the accent in your tremolo goes on your ring finger, the A finger. Now, to just backtrack a tiny bit and explain why this is, the illusion of tremolo is that of a singing line that happens in tandem with a bass line, that sounds like they're happening at the same time. You have and the melody up the top, and an audience wouldn't be able to tell that the bass is happening separate from the melody. They wouldn't hear it as, they hear both happening, ringing at the same time. And what that means really is that what we have, or the illusion we're trying to create, is a bass line in quavers or whatever you like, and a triplet up top. That's a triplet. Really. It's just interrupted with a bass line intermittently in between each triplet, but the illusion at speed is a triplet up the top. Now, the way tremolo is often taught is slowly with a metronome, which I would absolutely say keep doing it with a metronome. But be very aware, what you're doing with slow practice with a metronome is you are practicing a 4-finger pattern, P-A-M-I. And if you do that with a click on the metronome, you will be unintentionally accenting your middle finger. Because in a set of 4 crotchets, or an arpeggio exercise like, we put an unintentional accent on the middle beats. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and... Now if you apply that to tremolo and you practice your tremolo, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and... you are putting an accent on your thumb and the middle finger. And if you then speed that up, you get a really weird accent in the middle of your tremolo triplet. Da-da, 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 which just doesn't work. And that's why so many students' tremolos really struggle to get that flowing feeling, because they've got a whopping great accent in the middle of their triplet. So instead of practicing the tremolo like this, which places the thumb on the beat, start practicing your tremolo like this, with the thumb as an upbeat and the ring finger as the accent. So thinking of the thumb almost like as an and before the 1 of the next bar. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, and ring, and ring, and ring, And it's really, really weird practicing your pieces like that with a metronome on. Sounds a bit silly. But it's this concept that once it's sped up, the illusion is then complete. And that's really it. That is the bit of advice I would say to take on and start practicing. If you're a student or you've been trying tremolo for a long time, practice your entire pieces, but put the ring finger on the beat. And it will take a while of working around to get your ring finger the strongest of the three of your triplet up top to let your tremolo start singing. Okay, so now we get into the less important but still important little concepts to think about with tremolo. Now, what I see a lot in books and online lessons is this idea of planting exercises. So the concept of planting is when one finger plucks, the next finger in the sequence comes down and prepares on the string immediately afterwards. And what this achieves is the fingers being able to stay very close to the strings as opposed to having excess movement. And you can also get a more reliable tone this way and check for things like nail clicks and other undesirable sounds. So if I do a planting exercise for you, I would play my thumb. Once my thumb is plucked, my ring finger immediately prepares on its string. Then when the ring finger plucks, my middle finger immediately prepares. And when my middle finger plucks, the index finger goes down straight away. And then when my index finger plucks, my thumb's down. So what this will achieve is my fingers staying very close to the strings. And I can also check for undesirable sounds like that little click sound. That's not really what I want when I'm in tremolo, to have one of my 4 notes every time having a click. So you can learn to adjust your nail shape and how much skin and nail you get in contact when you prepare on a string. It's really great for that. But if I only practice my tremolo like that, I will end up with, and I see this so many times with students, is their tremolo is amazing, but their fingers are coming down too early after the previous finger because they've practiced so many planting exercises. So if I were to only practice like that, my tremolo might end up sounding, really exaggerating, but it might sound like that. And you see that really commonly with a lot of students. Their tremolo is working great, but the fingers are just coming down nanoseconds too soon and not letting the string vibrate fully and sustain properly. So what I would advise is going between the two in your practice, planting and then absolute legato. And when I mean absolute legato, I mean when one finger plays, the next finger doesn't ever prepare on the string. It doesn't come down, then pluck. It comes from the air and it goes straight through in one strike with no preparation. So there's no chance for the previously plucked note to be stopped at all. It rings on until the next note is plucked, and so on, and you get absolute legato. I'll just make up an exercise. Let's do planting. No planting. And so on. And I would say that this idea of absolute legato is something to bring into all of your guitar playing, not just tremolo, but your scales. It's a real bugbear of mine of guitarists in general, even amazing guitarists out there. To achieve absolute legato on guitar is so difficult, and it requires really slow practice. To give one final example and to really hammer this point home about absolute legato, if you were to take those 3 plucks from your E string with your tremolo, the AMI, the slower you practice those, the more you get to peak at the distance between the notes and see if you're really playing with legato or if there is a slight stopping between the notes. If I play fast, the notes are going by so quickly that I have no chance to look in between the notes and see how well my legato is. If we do the polar opposite if I do one pluck, now I can really tell if I'm doing like, that would be me just preparing a bit before I pluck, which ruins the legato. The legato needs to be absolute. There can never be any millisecond or whatever when your finger prepares before it plucks, because it will sound sort of stunted. All right, next tip is to do with rhythmic inconsistencies with your tremolo. I get a lot of students coming to me and the tremolo is working pretty good, but there's just some sort of skipping or hopping or rhythmic inconsistency between some of the fingers. A bit like that, to exaggerate. Ba-da-da, ba-da-da, ba-da-da. You can attack this in two different ways. One is obviously your nail shape. You need to make sure that when your fingers go through the strings, they sound the same, but they also feel the same. You feel the same vague amount of resistance before you go through the string. If your middle finger just holds on to that string or has a little bit more resistance before it's able to pass through the string, and then you're trying to do this at lightning speed with tremolo, that slight extra bit of pressure that your middle finger needs to pluck will make it pluck late. And you'll get you'll get these rhythmic sort of hopping or dotting of notes. So one is just to look at your nails. You can look at them yourselves, or if you have a teacher, that's really, really good to look at the shape and the sound and make sure that's all consistent there. But the other way of approaching it, and I do this with everything. I do this with scales, arpeggios, tremolo, anything that I want to be mechanically robotic, almost machine gun accuracy, I do a lot of rhythmic variations. So if we were to take the tremolo, we can do it as a straight rhythm. Or we could have it as a dotted rhythm. Or we could have it as a sort of Scotch snap. Or we could just literally make up any rhythms we can think of. You can come up with endless rhythmic variations. And what that means is you've now exercised that combination of fingers in every single rhythmic permutation that you could think of. And it will be so much more even when you come and play it straight. To give one example, if you find your tremolo is sounding dotted, if you're sort of hearing that, if that's your problem, what does that mean? If you're going bum ba da da dum da da da, that means your ring finger is arriving a bit late, and your index finger is arriving a little bit late. So if you were then to go and practice rhythmic variations that did the opposite, had your thumb and ring plucking very close together, and your middle and index plucking close together, you're massaging that bias that you had before, and you're practicing the opposite. And then when you come back to play evenly, I promise you it will really work. So do these variations with your arpeggios, your scales, your pieces, any right hand pattern that you're having trouble getting even, rhythmic variations, it just fixes almost everything. Now to focus on the slightly more musical side of your tremolo. Once you feel like it's sounding how you want it to sound, it's rhythmically quite consistent, the legato's there, the accent's on the ring finger, we now need to think about how to use the tremolo expressively. Because without expression, it's just an endless machine gun rattle of a note that never breathes the entire piece. And I think this is a really important aspect of the tremolo, is to think about, okay, I am now responsible for a sustained melodic line. So if I was a singer, I would not just sing endlessly. I need to use breath and dynamics and phrasing to phrase my lines. And even though the tremolo technique may go on endlessly throughout some of the pieces you're playing, there are ways of making it sound like it has breath and making it sound like it is more flexible, like a singing voice. So one is purely just to think about breath. When you sing, you need to breathe at certain points. So you need to identify in your pieces when your phrasing ends, you need to tail it off slightly. This could be dynamically, just with a decrescendo, but sometimes I think it needs to be paired with an alteration of your speed. And a really good way of exercising this and starting to think about your tremolo more expressively is just to come up with a fun chord progression or a chord progression you like and start mucking around with it with rubato and dynamics, slowing down, speeding up. So I quite like this little chord progression I came up with. I'll put the chords just down below. Start from a D major. Just going up and down that. Now I wouldn't just start a phrase in tremolo or a piece in tremolo at full speed. That'd be total madness. Absolute insanity. I would ease into it. So you can use this exercise of going through these chords with tremolo to think about your expression and how you alter your speed of your tremolo to match easing into a phrase or easing out of it, or lingering on an expressive slide. So for instance, I might start my tremolo, maybe the first 2 rounds of tremolo, easing into my full speed. I took more time on the top there. I didn't just go. You would be more malleable with your tremolo. So you ease in, slow, and maybe decrescendo, and slow down at the end as well. So just starting to think about your tremolo as this malleable voice. And it's really, really useful for your playing in general. I think some of the best guitar players, or the most musical guitar players out there, they're the ones in their minds who are singing. So come up with a chord progression that you like. It could be absolutely anything you can think of. And just do it with tremolo and play around. Mess around with your dynamics, being able to speed up, slow down. Should have done my nails before this video, but there we go. So that is it really. That's just a few little pointers that were never really explained all that well to me, and I wish they had been at an earlier stage so I could have started practicing them sooner. So I hope that's helped some of you out there. This is really sort of advanced stuff for getting tremolo to I think its full potential. But if you would like to see a full series on building up tremolo from scratch, please let me know. Or if you'd like to see another video on a different aspect of guitar technique, maybe, do drop a comment in the comments below and let me know. I'm hoping to do a few more of these, particularly on just concepts that I come into regularly in teaching that just do not seem to be explained properly. I hope you're all safe and well wherever you are in the world. Thanks very much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.